According to ESPN, Pascal Siakam has agreed to a 4-year deal for 189.5 million. This deal would pay him on average about 47.36 million per year, around that range. So close to 50 million a year he would be getting for this contract, which leads me to ask this question: is he worth this money? Is this an overpay, or is this a good deal for the Indiana Pacers? Now, when I look at his numbers, especially his regular season numbers, they were actually, I would say, pretty good this year for the Pacers. So in his overall regular season numbers was 21.7 points per game, 53% overall from the field, and 34 from three. He averaged 7.1 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and zero point 0.3 blocks, zero point 0.8 steals. Overall, pretty good numbers. When he goes to Indiana this year, his numbers pretty much stayed the same. They didn't really change by much once he got there. They were nearly identical. So he put up really good numbers. You give him credit for that. And then you look at his playoff numbers. When I look at his playoff numbers this year compared to the regular season, they were also nearly identical. Nothing dropped off during the playoffs, which is great because you want your key guys to be able to play at a high level during the playoffs. And Siakam definitely showed that throughout the playoffs. His game still remained at the level it was during the regular season, which is pretty good when you look at these numbers. That's a good sign. I would say when I look at Siakam's playoff numbers for his career, they're also pretty good. I'm looking at them right now. He averaged 17.3 points per game on 48% shooting overall from the field and 6.6 rebounds, along with 3.1 assists per his playoff career average. This year in the playoffs, he averaged his regular season numbers, which was a little bit over 20 points a game, about 8 rebounds, that stat line. And you look at just all the other playoff runs he's had, they've all been pretty good. When you look at his runs in Toronto, the only bad playoff run he had was 2020. And I just throw that one out of the window because that was a bubble. Everything was out of whack during that playoff run. But you look at the other playoff runs he's had, he's been pretty damn good. He's great as a second banana. That's the way I view him. Just that's his role. He can play like a Scottie Pippen like role as a sidekick, but I feel you need a great player to be the number one with him. Now in Toronto, he experienced that for that 1 year with Kawhi, where Kawhi was the best player in that 2020 playoff run, not just for the Raptors, but for the whole entire playoffs. He was the best in the world for those few months. It really showed. Siakam was great at playing off of Kawhi. He was great as a second guy. To be honest, I really thought that Kawhi should have stayed in Toronto with him. They had a good thing going, but obviously Kawhi wanted to go to LA, so he threw that out. But I thought he complimented Kawhi really well. Now going forward, I think it's really going to come down to Tyrese Halliburton. If he can really elevate his game during the playoffs, I'm just going to pull up Tyrese's numbers this year. Let's look at them. His regular season numbers: 20.1 points per game, 10.9 assists, 47 overall from the field, 36 from three. So let's look what he did in the playoffs this year. His scoring was a little bit down in the playoffs, 18.7 points per game, I would say. His field goal percentage overall from the field was a little bit up, so 48 overall. I give him that. His three-point percentage was a little bit higher also during the playoffs, so another good sign for him. Now his assists went down a little bit, 8.2 assists per game, 1.3 steals. But overall, he was still nearly as good as he was during the regular season during the playoffs. But I think the question just begs to be asked is that can Tyrese be a dynamic scorer when his team needs him to step up? I think that's something that still needs to be answered, that you still had to question if he can do that. He had his moments in the playoffs where he had games where he scored above 30. But I think if this team is going to win it all, he's going to have to be a guy who can just dominate a series scoring wise. I think that's going to have to happen, I feel. for this team to be successful. But I think it really hinges on Tyrese, whether or not Siakam can lift the Pacers to another level, because Siakam is not number one. He's a number two. So the question is this an overpay for a number two guy? Honestly, it's hard for me to say. Now, if this was a few years ago, I would say yes. The only reason I'm saying that now is because you look at these new contracts, especially with the new CBA coming in. From what I've heard, in the next few years, you're going to see guys getting paid like $90 million to $100 million a year. That'll happen towards the end of this decade, probably around 2028, 2029. And starting now, I believe you're going to see guys getting 70 to 80 million a year. The top guys, the real legit superstars in the league, while Siakam's only getting 47 million, when you adjust to what he's getting compared to those guys, I would say he's probably getting his market value. So I would say, shockingly, it's not really an overpay when you compare the new numbers that are forecasted in today's NBA. You got to compare it with today's new numbers that are being forecasted versus the past. If you compare it to the past, of course it's an overpay, but today I would say it isn't. Now, do I think the Pacers are guaranteed to have the same success they had this year coming next year? No, I don't think it's guaranteed. They did luck out with the injuries to the Knicks, and I believe just the injuries to the Milwaukee Bucks to start the playoffs. I don't see them getting that lucky again. They had to prove themselves. It could have been all fool's gold this playoff run, so they can't really get cocky about their recent success. One thing I'll say though, due to their deep run, they did get a lot of experience, so that could come in handy, and we'll see if that pays off big dividends, especially the signing with Siakam. But like I said, I don't think it's overpay. I think it's market value for the current NBA.